And so I think the fact that, that we're cousins, we get to vibe on this level. It's like it's good.
Yes.
It feels
We
good.
go back all the way to our Selena days.
I was just about to say that. I was just about to say that. Our dreaming of you days.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh. I remember, I think we were like trying to do the washing machine or something like outside, remember? Like
Yes.
that was like a little bit after I moved to the US. So we were just, 8, 9, trying to live our best lives, trying
Trying
to
to
be
live our
someone.
best life. Okay, so you moved from Belize when you were how old?
I was, I think, 8 or 9. So I remember I came to the US and I started the 5th grade. So I was either 8 or 9 because I was a year ahead.
Oh my goodness. So how did it feel to you jumping right into like the fifth grade and then having to transition from the fifth grade into middle school in a new
Oh,
environment?
yeah, it wasn't, I mean, so it was, well, first of all, I came to the US and I didn't bring a suitcase. No clothes when I came. We went shopping that weekend. So it was just like new, everything was new. New clothes, new environment, new school, like just everything. And I think I was just kind of, it was like a culture shock because being in the 5th grade, I think the class had what, about 30 students. And it was just weird to me because like people would like talk back to the teacher or like it was just, sometimes it was chaotic and I was just like, oh no. And Belize, like, no, the teacher would use a ruler. Like, you can't talk back. What do you mean? So it was a culture shock. That's like the biggest thing I can say.
Okay, so let's dive in just a little bit deeper into the differences. So in Belize, experiencing school there, how is it different than experiencing school in the US?
So the biggest thing that would jump out at me is that in Belize, like schools are usually religion based or some sort of like, so I know they have schools that are like language based, religion based, whatever. So I grew up going to a Catholic school in Belize, so there were like nuns and teachers, but it was really strict and we wore uniforms and you were just expected to like behave a certain way and you went to church multiple times, like, your communion and everything was like linked through school, so it was really religious. And obviously, coming here, I didn't go to a Catholic school anymore. I was in public school. So it was just so different. We did have to wear a uniform, but it was just like a little bit wilder and like a lot different because obviously, when it's not linked to religion, it's just, oh, you're just kind of here and try to get an education, but it's, I don't know. I guess I felt like it was just a lot of chaos. But I did have a great teacher because my mom had told him like this was my first time being in the US or whatever. And I just moved and I had an accent, so I was clearly not from here. Well, from the US. So the teacher was like really understanding and he would talk to me and all that stuff. So that helped, but it was just so different. And obviously, like in Belize, I went to one school, like I knew everyone. My parents knew the teachers. It was like everyone in the neighborhood knew you and you went to that neighborhood school, whereas like here, that's not necessarily the case. And there's like no connection. You don't really, like, your parents don't know the other parents and it's just different in that way that like not everyone knows you. Like if they saw you on the street they'd be like, oh, that's so and so's daughter, go home, mama tell your mama. But like out here it's just like no one cares, or at least it felt that way to me.
Hmm. So in Belize, you experience more of it takes a
Community.
village to raise a child. The community, um, that community lookout, engagement, everybody like you said, everybody knows your mama and will tell your daddy type of situation.
Yes, so that's definitely the case. And I mean, in Belize, we used to go home for lunch because usually your school was pretty close by and you'd get an hour, so we'd go home and we'd like walk together. It was just like we walked by ourselves, but we would walk in groups because like we lived in the same neighborhoods really close to school. So, whereas out here, I was in an environment where I was like, oh, I don't go home for lunch. Like, I have to eat here, and there's like a cafeteria, and it was all new to me because, yeah, but it was definitely more of a community feel there than it is here. And there, I mean, but also here, there were just a lot more cultures and different types of people. Whereas in Belize, like, it's definitely more, I mean, I don't know. In Belize, we all felt like we were Belizeans first. So it seemed like it wasn't that many different types of people, whereas, like, in the US, I had friends that were like Black, Chinese, all like just, different cultures, and we didn't have that there.
Now let me ask you this. Did you ever experience like any community divide or any like community division, colorism, or anything like that in Belize? Because I know in the US we experience it. Now, is that something that you can say you experienced in being in Belize?
As a child, I don't think I mean maybe I could have, but I never felt that way. I never felt like I experienced any of that. I mean, sometimes the only thing I would experience is like so in Belize, some people are rich and some are poor, and I mean, we definitely weren't rich, and so sometimes it was you could feel that, and obviously like kids with more means would just have nicer stuff and they would make fun of different people, so we felt that in Belize, but I didn't feel like anything else about like race. It was just more of like how much money do your parents have.
Now being in and or growing up in an environment like Belize, like me personally, I have experienced like the outside bathrooms or the out, cold showers and things like that. And then you're also saying that there's certain individuals or certain families would be like considered rich. I actually kind of never looked at it that way. I kind of looked at everybody kind of being in the same boat. And then people who maybe had family that lived in the US, sending them things or sending them money would probably be more privileged be able to experience different things because of that. Is that still considered rich, or is it just being considered like, maybe lucky or more fortunate in a sense, you know what I mean?
I mean, I think I know what you're saying, and I feel like so in Belize there are people that like obviously a lot of us have families in the US, so we get like our clothes from here, food, they ship barrels and all that stuff. And then they also have people who are like middle class in Belize, like their parents work for the government, they're accountants, they're professors. So those people are like, I mean, their parents make a good income. So like that's, and some of them, I don't know, I guess they worked in the US before and just went back to retire. So they were what we would have considered rich just because their kids always looked nice. They lived in the bigger houses, and the bigger houses were right next to our houses. So we all lived together and played together, but they like had the housekeeper and they had just, help at home and all that stuff. So I think that's what we considered like the richer people because I mean, they treated us well, but they were definitely like, you could tell they were like, they had it together or someone was paying for this lifestyle.
Right, right. Okay. Now I want to tap more into the Garifuna culture and what you how you learned about it, what your experience was growing up or being in Belize, being surrounded by the Garifuna culture. And let's just start there. How what did being Garifuna mean to you? How was that brought into your life?
I think like the first thing I remember like as a child was just the eating, like so cassava and bread and Johnny cakes. Like my grandmother used to make, like she would talk about like making Garifuna food and Belizean food, but I think the food is the first thing I remembered. And also my grandmother had a lot of Garifuna outfits, so she would wear that a lot. And when I was pretty young, I remember our trips to Hopkins. So that's why I was just like super comfortable with going to Hopkins, because my grandmother, I know they did like the good, they had dances and different stuff that they would do in Hopkins, and she had family there. So we just went to Hopkins a lot. And I remember I also used to have a big straw hat I wore everywhere. And so it was just like the hat, the way you dress sometimes. Like we all used to have our Garifuna outfits for certain times of the year and all of that. So just the way of life when it came to food, when it came to going to Hopkins, and when it came to how my grandmother dressed. And the fact that she farmed. So those were the things that like really introduced me to the Garifuna culture, just the way of life when compared to other people who weren't Garifuna.
Okay, so going to school and being in a school where religion was where it was religion based, was did you ever notice that there was a conflict between religion and maybe being Garifuna?
Um, I don't think I noticed that because my grandmother was super religious too. Like I didn't notice that until actually I think I was in college and doing research and all that stuff about the Garifuna people. And but like just my grandmother went to church all the time. There were like all these holidays and just like sometimes on a random Wednesday morning, like so she went to church all the time, and then she'd wear her Garifuna outfits to church. So I think they did incorporate some of their culture into the Garifuna outfit, because into the Catholic Church, because I remember I think there was like one holiday where you would go barefoot, and I think they would wash your feet or something like that. And you take like a basket of fruit or whatever you had like off your tree and just go to church that morning. And so I think they kind of combined the two when it came to certain traditions. So I never noticed the clash. But when I started going to the Catholic Church in the US, it was definitely like different. I was like, oh, we didn't do this, or oh, like it's just there are certain things that the Catholic Church out here does that we like didn't do or didn't take nearly as seriously, or our sermons and stuff were just different. But they were preaching the same thing.
Okay. Okay. So let's see. Being a pregnant woman during this pandemic,
Oh gosh.
yes.
I feel robbed.
Talk about it. Why do you feel robbed? Because I barely missed it. I had my baby in February, in the middle of February. And so, literally, like the week after, taking him to his first checkups, we would start to see, the little posters about COVID and stuff like that. But, but I was like right here with it. So tell me about your experience.
Okay, so I was actually like, so obviously I had my first baby, and I was super excited. Like I was just like, oh, I'm excited. I mean, I'm like I love to travel, so I was just like, oh my gosh, like I'm so excited for like my baby moon and just having a baby shower with like my family in LA and just stuff like that. Because I mean, that's what you do when you're pregnant, your maternity shoots, and just being able to like enjoy it and go outside being pregnant. Like, you wear your little well, I love fashion, so just wearing my maternity dress and my cute sandals, like, I don't know, when all my cousins were pregnant, like they got to live that life. And I feel like, so when COVID hit, I was living in Massachusetts. It was just snowing and cold outside anyway, but so pretty much I had my baby in June. So I was about, let's say, I don't know, around 5 to 6 months pregnant when COVID became a thing. So it changed everything just because like my doctor appointments started changing, obviously having to wear masks to those and having to some of them started becoming virtual. So it was like every other appointment started becoming virtual. And I was just like, this is my first pregnancy. How are you going to check the heartbeat if I'm like on the phone with you? So it's just, I mean, obviously I had a healthy pregnancy, so it was fine. But it's just like those experiences that you like can only, I mean, I don't know if I'll ever have any more kids because I was only planning on having one kid. So, like, just certain experiences that I don't think I'll ever get back. And I was just really looking forward to them. So, that's why I feel like I was robbed. I didn't do any of them.
And then as far as your husband, what were some of his fears or his concerns with you, being pregnant during this time? Like, were you guys kind of, fearing that he wasn't going to be able to be in the room with you as when you delivered? Go ahead.
So our biggest thing was that once I think so in March, so Gregory, my husband, he used to go to all my appointments with me and he would like listen to the baby's heartbeat and it was just our thing. So my appointments were usually on Friday mornings and we'd just go together before I'd go to work. So it was just, we were both really excited. And once COVID started, the clinic and hospital started saying like, you can't have someone with you. So the one good thing is my ultrasound, my 20-week ultrasound where it was like the body scan had already been done. So he was able to make that. But like, I think about a month or so after that, it was like they started restricting who could come with you. So he would basically drive me there and be on the phone, or like I would call him or FaceTime him. So, but it was just not the same. But he would be able to hear the heartbeat and ask the doctor any questions he had. So that was not so bad. But just, not having that person there. And it's both of our first kids. So it's like a big deal. And we were just excited. And the fact that he couldn't come to some of those. And then, so we lived in Massachusetts and we were moving to California 4 weeks before the baby was born. So it was just like, I did research on like OBGYNs and hospitals and like figuring out, oh, will my husband be able to be in the room with me? And I mean, it all worked out to where he was. They did do like a temperature scan every few hours and all of that. And we had to wear masks when we were in common areas, but it worked out. But it was just like the anxiety of not knowing because I'd been part of different groups on Facebook and certain people, they like couldn't be in the husbands couldn't be in the room, or if his temperature was off or anything like that, it would have been scary because he wouldn't have been able to like be there. But we were fortunate in that he was, but we were worried about it before because it's like, oh gosh, like I was like, I can't do this by myself. So
What's a myth that you heard about pregnancy that that you didn't experience during your pregnancy?
so
Or what's a pregnancy myth that you didn't experience during your pregnancy?
well, so I guess I was pretty like, I didn't talk much about my pregnancy to people, and I read like books because my husband's a nerd and he bought me pregnancy books. So I didn't feel like there was a lot of myths that like I don't think there was like a myth. I was like, oh my gosh, this is gonna happen or this or that's gonna happen. But I mean, I guess one thing was that like nausea ends during first trimester is what people say, and that was not my case. I think I dealt with nausea for like 18 weeks and it was terrible. So I mean, and just having to work through that and all of that, like that was something I wasn't expecting because I was like, oh, everyone says by like, the end of first trimester it ends, and I was waiting for it to end and it didn't, and I was just like, this is not okay.
Right. And it's funny that you say that because every pregnancy is different. And in my personal journey, my pregnancy was this last pregnancy for me was by the book. So everything that was that they said in the book is what happened during my pregnancy. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually like this pregnancy is by the book. And I didn't experience that with the other pregnancies. So that's, yeah, every pregnancy is different, but I'm glad that you finally got out of that stage, because some women, it goes even further than the 18 months and their whole pregnancy is, you know, them suffering.
Yeah, no, it's so funny because it got so bad to where I went to a doctor and got a prescription for a anti-nausea meds, and probably like a day or two later it just stopped, like before I started taking the meds. So I was like, well, I will praise, baby Jesus or whoever, but I'm grateful that it stopped. But I
Exactly.
just thought it was funny that it stopped like right after I got medication for it, and I hadn't started taking the medication yet.
Right. Okay. Racial injustice. What is your take on it?
Wait, sorry, I didn't hear you. What'd you
With you,
say?
okay, with you and your husband both being lawyers, how are you guys feeling about what's happening with this whole racial injustice, thing during this time?
Yeah, no. So it's funny because I like have some of these conversations with some friends, but I'm like, I'm tired and I'm tired of being tired. Like, it's funny because usually I'm like, I don't expect much, but at the same time, I still like, you're still hopeful, like, oh my gosh, maybe like something will happen. Or, oh, like maybe I'll be surprised, like pleasantly surprised, or like maybe charges will be brought and maybe like the charges will stick, or like the jury will convict, or, something like that. So I'm just like, at this point, I'm kind of numb to some of it just because I'm like I'm really disappointed in the legal system, but also law school makes you cynical, so you kind of see it coming anyway. So it's just like, it's not a great feeling. And now with having a kid, I don't like, part of it is I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to explain this to her. And I want the future to be better, but at the same time, I don't know. Like, I don't know if it will be. And you just kind of have to live with in the world that we're in. And it's just really sad and disappointing.
So what is your maternal instincts telling you, as far as as far as advice, as far as and like I mentioned in the previous question, with you guys being lawyers and having that background and being friends with other, people in the justice system, and then now being parents, what do you suggest, or what do you think, how do you feel, and what do you feel can can help us as
So
worldwide to be able to kind of overcome something like this? If it was in your hands, how do you think it could play out?
I think like I just feel like there needs to be a lot of changes to just the legal system, and it's It's kind of a mess. That's why I don't practice criminal law at all. Like I can't deal with that because it stresses me out. But at the same time I do keep track of like what's going on with the Supreme Court and everything else. So it's just like it just really shows you that it's a mess and it needs to get better. There are like biases and there are problems with the system. So knowing that, but my maternal instinct is to just protect my child. I want her to like live her childhood and be like as innocent for as long as possible. Obviously, like I want her to learn about like great women. So I'm like super happy Kamala's the VP candidate, and I ordered her a book about like RBG that comes out in January. So I want her to know that hey, great women did exist and they do strive to change the system. So I think that's like what I want to do for her, but also just protect her for as long as I can as a child, because I don't think you should be this stressed out about politics as a kid. I think you just need to enjoy it and you just kind of go with it. I mean, what I do is like I make sure I know what's going on and I donate to charities and all that stuff that like I support. And yeah, I think that's like the most you can do. Or if you, I mean, you can also go out there and protest and do other things, make calls, vote in every election. Like that's definitely something I do. But I mean, you just kind of have to figure out like, okay, what am I going to do as a person? Like what kind of world do I want my kid to be in? And just realize that like local elections matter and things like that. So just voting and voting people out of office if they're not doing what they said they're going to do and stuff like that, because they're the ones who can change the justice system. And your local elections and just certain prosecutors and all of that are voted in, so vote them out if they're like not behaving the way they're supposed to be, things like that. I think those are like the little things we can do that everyone has like the power to do. You don't have to be an attorney, you don't have to have a legal background, but you do have to like hold people accountable for like their word.
Okay, and then so our last question is going to be on it might not even really be a question. If you can say one thing to that 9-year-old immigrant child, what would you tell them?
I would tell her that it's gonna be okay, that she can do this, because that 9-year-old immigrant child was super shy and quiet and just like really just kind of, I don't know, I don't think she had a voice. And I think like the fact that I was able to grow and discover that voice. So I think I would tell her like, it's going to be okay, you got this, and just keep becoming educated because it's going to take you to where you want to go.